For some girls, not diamonds are their best friends, but a chisel, a hammer, a staple gun, and a reciprocating saw.
I'm always using second-hand molds because I think it really doesn't make any sense to create a mold just to smash it and destroy it a while after, and also the work is really full of different molds that nobody needs and that are not going to be used for anything else.
So I will show you what happens once I get hold of an unwanted plaster mold. So one of the most important decisions is to choose how to divide the mold, because depending on the lines, they will really define the end piece. So they can be like horizontal or vertical, or what I prefer, I do them diagonal because I believe it's the most dynamic. At the very beginning, I use numbers to mark order of pieces of my molds, but then I realized that permanent switching between the right half of the brain responsible for numbers and the left half responsible for processing space made it all much too complicated. Also, all the pieces are in a permanent process of further breaking apart into even smaller pieces, so there are more and more pieces and half pieces each time I cast, making it almost impossible to follow with numbers. So colors work the best for me. I have always been interested in the nature of the materials I work with. That's why I chisel away the smooth surface of my mold's interior, because it was shaped and smoothed by mold makers, and I'm trying to get to the internal structure of the plaster, which I believe is a true one. My studio is not very big. Just like many other studios, it rather always seems too small, and storing a large number of molds would be a problem. I also don't like the idea of having one mold to cast just one element, so I keep the edges of my plaster mold straight and even, as are the division lines within the segments. In this way, I can freely switch and replace various parts of different molds or change the position and order of the division in one mold. It is very important not only to have a sketchbook, but also to use it. Although my sketchbook is more like a notebook, because I'm not really sketching the shapes of the actual objects, how I imagine them. It's more like the notes to myself about the processes that I'm going to cause, that I'm going to start. because I really let the material and the porcelain and the way I'm firing to decide about the end shape of the object. Once I have selected the segments and decided how to combine them, I need to staple and tape them together. Depending on how well and how carefully I do it, I will have more or less problems later, as the tape and the staples hold all the elements together and allow me to manipulate the entire construction during the process of casting. The next step is to combine the different parts of different molds together, and to do it I use the tape again. As I said before, I can swap different parts in one module to alter the shape of the mold, or I can just leave them as they are. Again, taping different parts together needs to be done carefully and very tightly to hold the elements strong and stable. So when I tape it, I always, it's very important, especially with the big molds, to tape it really tight, because it prevents the casting slip from leaking out. And this is also the reason why I'm using the brown tape, because it's slightly transparent and I can always see how many layers I put on, and I can always see when it's less and where it's enough tape. I have been casting for over 20 years, and when I started I was casting like it should be done. I was casting like the generations of factory workers had been doing it before me, but then I got bored. I got bored because I'm not really into the idea of human being conquering all the elements and conquering all the materials.
So I wanted to follow the materials I was working with, plaster and porcelain. And I believe that this is where the actual power of the works come from this and from the fact that my materials and I were more partners in the studio than rivals. Because I don't use traditional molds and they are not built in a traditional way. Actually, they are more like rebel molds, so they need rebel solutions. And because I don't use the top part of the mold, which usually serves as a reservoir to hold and to store the extra casting slip during casting, therefore I need to build it myself with, yes, again, with tape. I always prepare the casting slip myself. I simply believe that there is no point in transporting water from the other side of the world, so I only transport dry materials and add water to them when they reach my studio. I use two different types of porcelain. One of them is Parianware from UK. It was invented in the 19th century to imitate alabaster, and it was designed for casting small figures, which for me would be an obvious reason alone to use it for large molds, and it has a really beautiful quality when it deforms and when it is overfired. The other one I use is French porcelain. It's more rough in its appearance, and its color is different from the Parian, being a much cooler white, in fact a bit grayish. So I use one or the other depending on the project, but what I like most is combining these two very different qualities of white in one piece and playing with the contrast that such an encounter creates. I use a lot of recycled scraps in my casting slip, but I don't see a point in drying the material first, just to add water to it again. So to maintain the right proportion of water and materials, without having to dry them first, I stick to the rule that the gravity of the casting slip should be 1.8, which really means that 1 liter of slurry should weigh 1.8 kilograms. Once I have this done, I can decide how much defloccuant I need to add. Defloccuant is that magic ingredient that, when added to slurry, turns it into a liquid. This is a way to reduce the amount of water in the mixture, as a high percentage of water always causes problems and distortions. Defloccuants are electrolytes. They essentially arrange pluses and minuses on the surface of the clay particles in slurry and cause them to push each other away rather than pull themselves closer. The casting slip is a thixotropic fluid, just like ketchup or kefir. That means it has the property of becoming liquid-like state when force is applied, and it returns to a gel-like state without force. So it will always thicken when not in use and will always need proper stirring before being used again.
Casting slip is a mixture of water, clay, and defloccuant. Plaster mold absorbs water from the mixture, gradually building thicker and thicker wall. So the longer casting slip stays inside, the thicker piece you will get. So casting, especially casting large molds, is really a matter of waiting for the desired thickness of a wall to build up. One of the most frequently asked questions is how long the casting slip needs to stay in the mold. And there is only one answer that is precise, and that is it depends. It depends because each casting slip, each clay, each porcelain will need a different time. It depends on the defloccuant, the amount of water added to the casting slip, the size, the age of the mold, how hard it has previously worked, and how often it has been used. Then the temperature in the room and even the weather outside. The plaster mold absorbs water from the casting slip as well as from the air around. And when it rains, everything takes really much longer. So there's only one way to do it. I just need to be around, and every now and then I need to check how thick the cast is. And since I'm not using the top reservoir part of the mold, each time I need to take out some of the casting slip and check the thickness at the edge of the actual cast. Then I decide if it's done or if I still have to wait. And once I see it's enough, I can empty it. Opening the mold is like reversing the entire process. I need to remove the tape, remove the staples, and while opening the mold, I need to rebuild it on the side. Once cast, the piece should be left to dry, just like any other piece of freshly made ceramics. So this is the shelf where usually I keep the pieces waiting for the bisque firing, but right now I'm preparing the exhibition in Berlin, so the workshop is basically in chaos. There's everything like all over the place, and as you see, there are different pieces mixed here. It's very important for me to keep the pieces as natural as they are, and that's why I never smooth the creases and the imperfections, but nevertheless, each of them always need a gentle touch before going for the bisque firing. Once they are bisque fired, I will adjust and combine them and high fire them together. But at the moment the pieces are just too fragile to be piled on top of each other, so they have to go through the bisque firing separately. The whole process takes long time, and after the pieces have been bisque fired, I often change my mind about how I want to use them and where and how they are going to be arranged. So sometimes they need to be slightly adjusted to fit the new arrangements better.
I always fire the pieces upside down, and I like to overfire them because it lets me maintain and lose the control in the same time. And I do it in order to let the materials be what they want to be, and I believe that this is the way how I can meet with them halfway. So I don't really want to, plan everything in the beginning of the process. I really like when the ready piece is kind of like the compromise between what I and what the material want to be and how it wants to be.
Because I overfire the pieces, because I arrange them together in different ways for the firing, because I deform them, opening the kiln is always a big surprise. And what I always say is that if I knew in advance what the pieces would look like after firing, I wouldn't have to make them at all, would I? A big part of having fun in the studio is learning from the process and allowing the materials to be equal partners while working. I cannot really imagine making good art without having fun while doing it.
Sztrucla. Monika, chcesz sztrucly?
No.
A tu tort? Ładny tort. To beza?
Przestań, jeszcze raz. I nie pokazuj mi nic, bo się zagapiam na ciebie.
Się będzie działo.
Błagam cię, bo ja już więcej tego razy nie będę w stanie powiedzieć. Seweryn.
Zapomniałem mikrofonu.
Seweryn.
Wiedziałem, że tak będzie.